Somebody breathing heavily.
I think it's John. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to work. Welcome to the first edition of the week of the GAI Insights news briefing. I am here with Luda, John, Adam, and Ankaj, and we will let you know if the news that came in over the weekend or late last week is essential, important, or optional. We're going to cover a lot of topics that are important around Gen AI. We'll be talking small models. We'll be talking about prompt engineering. We'll be talking about data. So let's go ahead and dive right into all this. Oh, and robots, of course, which I assigned to Luda. Here we go. Ankaj, kick us off.
Thanks, David. So the first one that we have for today comes from Kotu Management, and they talk about how robotics won't have their ChatGPT moment.
Yes, Luda.
Yes, I like this. This is not news per se. This is an opinion piece that talks about robots and what to expect going forward and what's actually happening. The reason they called it that it won't have a ChatGPT moment, meaning the moment like everybody joined when ChatGPT was announced, everybody got to, or a lot of people got to try it. So here it's harder to try. So for that reason, because it's robots, it's a lot of hardware and the entry cost is higher. So they say it's very unlikely to be ChatGPT type moment, but the robots with advent of LLMs and AI, this essentially are the development is accelerating dramatically. And the prediction is that, in fact, there will be the almost general purpose robots coming up very shortly. The article doesn't predict when, but shortly. And I kind of agree. There's lots of developments happening. So it's an important article, I think, to read as an opinion piece.
All right.
Yeah, I thought it was beautifully laid out. I mean, in terms of what the issues are, around training data sets, the different levels of robotics. I'd forgotten how early robotic pool cleaning had been done back in the 50s, actually. I was actually going to make the case for essential for one particular reason, which is not only, one particular reason. I'm about to give you two reasons. Not only is this a great, the compendium of some of the issues and progress and so forth, but the second thing is on page 23 of the PowerPoint presentation, they have a graph that shows when humanoid robotics are going to be cheaper than labor. And that is 2026 or 2027, right there. Yes. And that, I think, is a huge issue when you look at the US wage rate. And that's coming up very, very soon. So I was going to make the case for essential because at that point, we're going to see even more labor substitution with capital. So absolutely important. I'd make the case for essential.
Oh, elevating to essential. Adam, what do you got?
Well, I think I agree with parts of what they both said. I agree with Luda that the opinion piece itself is interesting. The PDF, the 45-page PDF that comes with it, is quite something. It is data rich. It is informative. It was fascinating to look through it. I mean, it's going to shape the entire landscape of everything. But at the same time, there were parts that are still speculative. There's still opinions. Like, this is amazing to see, but that's not really what's going to happen. That's someone's projection. So I would think I would call it an important read, especially the PDF itself. But I couldn't quite get over the hump and say this is essential, especially given that it's not necessarily going to be directly relevant for all industries.
Yeah.
But Adam, you just said it's going to shape everything, and it's not essential. Come on, man.
Well, just because the trend is going to shape everything doesn't mean that this article.
Yeah, I'm a busy, time-starved AI exec. This is not what I need to spend my time reading.
Yeah, I'm with Adam, John. This it has a lot of interesting points for sure, and that's why I think it is important. But robotics doesn't touch everything yet, and it would take some time to do that. So it's a good read, good to know, good to agree to disagree with his opinions, but I don't think it's essential.
All right, we've got some hard optionals, 2 out of 3 in our democracy. That is when I moderate. So we will go with important on this one. Next.
Okay, the next one comes from New York Times and it talks about how the data that is powering AI is disappearing fast. So this is a new research from Data Provenance Initiative.
All right, John.
Yes, I think that this particular article lays out the fact that content providers are being more aggressive in their restrictions on the ability to crawl their data and information. This is a trend that's been going on for some time, and certainly the New York Times is in the middle of it with their lawsuit against OpenAI. And I would put this as optional. I don't think that there's a lot of new news here. The notion that people actually want to get paid for their content, I think, is a lovely trend. I do share the author's worry that people with less capital and the academic institutions may get caught in the net of actually having the big powerful companies pay for their content, which I think they should. They should be paying for data sets and training sets. They have the money. It should be part of the cost of the capital investment in growing a model. But I would put this as optional, well written, articulate, optional.
I would like to make a case for essential. And this is to our discussion a number of times. You know, when you license IP for a startup, deep tech IP from a university gives you a number of years before they start putting serious license fees on the startup. See, if we want that technology commercialized, right, and we do, we need some mechanism to be able to get that going. And yeah, I agree. At some point, the content creators need to get paid for it. But we also have a really weird system. Like we talked about YouTube, right? Would little guys who actually create the content be paid? Maybe YouTube as a platform will get paid, but would it be distributed? Very unlikely. So it's a complex issue, and that's why I think there should be awareness when you're putting a block on something or other on your website. You should be very aware what you're doing. You're essentially blocking the crawlers. And is that data important to you? So important that you want to block it, or you're just doing it because it's a backlash? It's just an interesting conundrum that I think all of us have to be aware of. How do we solve it? There's no clean solution here.
Yeah, I was actually going to go important, but I may be misunderstanding something about this article. It seemed to say that these large data sets that companies are already using to train AI, 5% of the data and 25% of the data from the highest quality sources in it has been restricted. So is it saying that data is that's already in there? Now people have put the robots.txt block on it and don't want it used. So is it saying, okay, anytime you use these data sets, you're now using data that somebody has said they want blocked? That's a problem. And also a little confusing. Like, do they have an argument if like they just put it on now, the robots.txt block, but it was open for a while and so people took it like that? I made me feel like, well, this is relatively important because now you're using data and that somebody has said they don't want you to use anymore, and you can't pull it out of these data sets. So did I
Well, I think
understand?
yeah, I mean, my understanding is they started to crank up more policy around restrictions. Now, as it says in the article, it's if you don't have if you're not willing to bring lawsuit, the robot.txt doesn't prevent someone from doing it. It just says it's not in our policy. So if they hop over the digital fence and decide to go in your yard anyway, it's up to you to enforce it. And so, I think alluded to, to the point of, people putting this up here. If you have a webmaster that doesn't understand the relationship between, robot.txt and crawling, I think you should get a new webmaster. I think it's well known to anybody doing this. So I, I, I still think it's optional.
Yeah, but we have talked about in the past that this is like now a kind of a strategic business decision, right? Whether you want to block something or not, because we've also talked about how search is, moving into GPT like tools, and therefore there could be an argument for not wanting to block it, whereas your web person may decide, of course we want to block this. Like, we don't want our stuff crawled, because they're not really thinking through that strategic business issue. So
yeah, but this article doesn't make that point. This article is just about access to the data.
My point is not about the business per se, because if you're a business leader, you want to be paid for your content, so you will block it. But David, it's real time. Whatever is in text, you shouldn't be. The crawlers can go, but they can't take it, and they can take it, but they can have a liability to be sued, right? So it's a real time system.
we lost
The prior versions, right? The first crawlers could take it because the texts were not there, or they were not strong enough. So as a business leader, you would want to be paid for your content. That is a norm, right? The issue here is more like controlling, or not controlling, but regulating what we're doing with it. Data is critical. If we want good AI agents, we need data. So how do we do it as a society if on the side of the businesses and the content created, everybody yells, oh, I need to be paid? We will eliminate all the researchers and all the small entities, because they can't raise billions.
Right.
So
I'm going to stop you, because you need to fix your audio. It's in and out. So we hear half of what you're saying. So I kept you going because it sounds important, but then we miss half and we start to lose the plot.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm going to go important on this one to split the difference, and because I rated it that way. Okay, next.
Okay, the next one comes from Apple. So Apple has launched a new open source model, it is saying it's truly open source because they have shared the weights and everything, and it outperforms Mistral and Hugging Face offerings.
All right, Adam, what do you think?
So I rated this news as optional. It is interesting. Basically, Apple has come out with some models, and they're pretty impressive. A couple things to note: these new small models, they're 7 billion parameters, so on that smaller side, like the Mistral 7B kind of model size. But this is fully what I like the distinction they make in this article between open source and open data, right? Open source meaning the weights are available, versus open data where all of the code is out there. They're completely licensing it. You can go and take this thing and use it for commercial purposes for what they've put out, and is available. I think it's a really interesting move. It's great to see these open data and open source models continuing to compete and even outperform. The other interesting thing I did note in this article was they're talking about a refined curation technique, and that they're getting better and better at figuring out ways to efficiently train these small models so that they can perform at that higher level. But at the end of the day, I fared to see sort of a broader industry significance of what this brings to the table, other than another competitor in the space. And it's a big deal that it's Apple, but it was optional news.
Yeah, and just to be clear on the nomenclature, in case this becomes the norm, what they were calling open model is if only the model is open and the data set is not available. And then open source is truly when the data set and the parameters and everything is available. We have an optional rating. Do we have any differences or commentary? Luda, John. All right. Optional it is. Let's go to the next one.
Oops.
You're on mute, Ankaj, if you're trying to introduce this.
Sorry, my bad. Yeah, so the next one comes from Salesforce. So Salesforce is releasing an autonomous AI customer service agent.
All right. We have on this one, we have, oh,
John.
I
it
think
went
it's
out
me.
a little
John.
bit. Oh, here we go. John.
I think it's me. Yes. This is a story. Basically, it's a short article that talks about how Salesforce is now giving some decision rights to their agent to begin processes like taking somebody through a series of steps to return a product, for example. And I rated this as optional. The idea here is they're going to try to automate the basically robotic process automation in customer interactions. And people have rightfully been frustrated by many of the chat bots in terms of their lack of responsiveness or rigidity and their desire to get to a human. Salesforce is testing this in the marketplace to see will the agentic solution actually help. I want to wait a little bit till we get some actual in-use data and so forth. This is a complex area, and I am one of those people that goes nuts when I get frustrated and I hit the zero like 17,000 times on the voice tree to get to a human, try to get to a human being. And I can only imagine the craziness that's going to happen as these agentic systems get released for customer interactions. So super important area, optional in my book until we see some data. If they can actually slay the beast, then this would be essential, but we're not there yet.
Yes, we don't even know when this is coming to market. There's no info on that. Any thoughts, Luda, Adam?
Yeah, I would agree with all. It's still in process and it's really complex. Agree.
All right, optional it is. Let's go on to the next.
Okay, the next one is a research paper. So it's a systematic survey of prompting techniques. They have titled it as a report, and it provides us a view of various different kinds of prompting techniques that are out there.
Yes, I thought they did a nice job with this, kind of the prompt engineering cookbook. And I also thought it was a nice example of how researchers can use LLMs to do meta-analysis, because that's what they've done here to help them. What did we think about this one, Luda?
I rated it as important. Ankash, could you go to the content page, the second and the third, I think? It's a very comprehensive report. As you all know, the prompting affects everything and how it's done. So these guys went into every every type of prompt that you can do.
Luda, your audio is coming in and out again.
Okay, sorry. So somebody
That's better. Whatever you're doing.
important it is. I think it goes into every part of the prompt making, engineering prompt as well, and summarizes. This is a good article to keep in your pocket to refer to. Important, if not essential.
All right. Whatever you did there at the end made your audio improve markedly, so keep doing it. What do we think, Adam?
I was originally optional. I thought it was a pretty cool approach and a framework, but I guess I haven't seen enough science around whether this framework actually makes a difference. But as Luda was talking, I was thinking, well, I could get behind, like, what do we call it, lower back pocket versus upper back pocket, like that it could be an important thing to keep around. It does offer some really great thought leadership. I didn't have enough chance to really get a sense of whether they were organizing this based on like finding a good framework or whether they were backing the framework with science. and they came up with this framework as a result of testing, or whether they were just sort of, I mean, but to be said, I think there's like 14 pages of references at the end of this. So I think they're using a lot of research to back their research. And so I think I could see it as an important approach.
Yeah, well, a lot of it also is definitional, right? And just trying to create a common language around this. I'd be surprised if anything else this comprehensive exists for prompt engineering, and given it's a new space that every developer is learning. I mean, I was going essential on this one personally. John, what did you think?
Yeah, for similar reasons, David, I was going to go essential as well. Adam, in terms of the science of it, I think what's going on here is this is an inductive taxonomy based on the semantics in the published data, and they do a pretty good comprehensive job as far as I can tell. I'm not an expert in prompt engineering, but as a academic, part-time academic, former academic, I think they did a pretty robust job here of surveying the landscape and putting it together in a wonderful framework. I think it's essential because of three things. One, this is such an important area, as you say, David, and everybody is either learning it or figuring out how to do it. Two, there isn't a taxonomy and an approach and a language system for this complex and vital area of interface design and interrogation design. And three, I think that the language they use here is actually useful in the wave of agentic systems to come. That Adam, you're obviously always guiding us toward, I think, rightly. And so I would say it's essential. Michael Novak says tech essential, business important. Michael, we are dealing with the AI leader who should be versed in both. And I think this is something, if I were an AI leader, I would read, and I would also make sure that the architects in my organization understand this. And it would also influence my acquisition, not my sourcing strategy with my data vendors and so forth.
I totally agree, guys. And I'm backing essential for one simple reason, and that is in the world when a prompt change creates huge changes in output, it is important how we do prompts. So essential.
All right. We've got 3 going essential. It makes it essential. Okay, next one.
Okay, the next the next one comes from Figma. So there was a recent news where Figma had ripped off some Apple designs in its new design generation tool. Now Figma has explained why its tool ripped off those Apple designs.
Yes, we discussed this one when it happened, and we gave some kudos to the CEO who took responsibility quickly and quickly pulled this down. Adam, what do you think?
I think this news itself is optional. What I will say though is that I continue to be impressed with the way they're handling this. They've done an exceptional job. So basically, what the VP of Product Design Noah has come out and explained is he's actually just sort of proverbially opened the kimono and said, look, this is how it works. This is the model we're using. They're using GPT-4o on the back end, and then Amazon's Titan for the image and actually creating the final designs. And they've just shown people exactly how it works. They said they didn't say which, but they've licensed 2 design suites of like little pieces that can put together. And of course, best practice is going to end up having them create a lot of things that probably look a lot like the stuff that's already out there. So in this case, the specific one that was raised was that if you prompted it to give you a weather app, it gave you something that looked almost identical to the first party Apple weather app that's available on your iPhone already. And so there was a lot of speculation that maybe they had trained this thing on other data like what's already out there on the Apple device. And it looks like that's not the case, but I applaud them for doing the right thing, pulling it down, and not only doing the forensics and the analysis, but being very transparent about what they're actually doing and how they're doing it. All that being said, I think the news itself is probably optional.
Yeah, although you did make an argument that it could be a good piece to give to AI leaders and say, hey, in case anything
This
happens,
is how it's done. Yeah.
yeah, here's how to do it right, right? What do you think, Luda?
Yeah, I still put it as an optional. A good explanation, but yeah, optional.
John?
Adam said everything I wanted to say, but better.
Amazing, of course. All right, we have come to the end, I believe. That is the last article. Am I correct, Ankaj?
Yes, David. But we didn't rate this last one,
Oh, we do
the
have.
final rating.
Well, then, no.
Optional.
It's the rating.
Optional.
Optional for this one.
Okay.
All right, so we will see our summary in a moment. John, Learning Lab tonight, do you happen to know the topic speaker?
I don't, unfortunately. I thought Paul was going to join us this morning, so I lazied out and didn't find out.
If you'll give me just a second, I can find it and tell you, because I made the social tile for it a
Very
while back. So we have Roya Kondalan, who is a PhD. She's a Gen AI research scientist, and she will be presenting on fine-tuning Gemini in AI Studio and Vertex AI.
Very interesting, as always. All right.
I'm going to be doing a 5-minute on the relationship between the WINS framework and how much of your AI stack you should own versus rent or buy.
Even more interesting. All right. I know I'll have it on in the background as I'm working incredibly late tonight on some crazy deadlines I'm operating against today. Okay, so what do we have? We have one essential there in the middle, the prompt report. Several of us thought they did a really nice job on that. We've got two importance, one on robots, one on data in it's disappearing, and that's because people are blocking from training off their data. And all the rest is optional. So please do join us tonight. 7 p.m. Eastern is when we have the Learning Lab. You can go to our LinkedIn page and grab the link to join. And that's it for today. Thank you all analysts. Great job as always. And we will see everybody tomorrow.